Hi, thanks for joining me for a virtual coffee talk. I'm Melissa Schweisguth, and I foster inclusive agricultural-based market development at the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. That's the US government's International Development and Relief Agency. Now, today I'm going to take you on a tour of our coffee work around the world where we work with the coffee sector. Of course, we'll start with a cup of great coffee. So let's picture ourselves in a cafe, a woman-owned cafe, maybe in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, or Tegucigalpa, Honduras. The coffee is amazing, and they focus on hiring youth baristas that make incredible latte art with these landscape scenes. Now, the cafe received funding and business development support by winning a business plan competition supported by a US government-funded activity that's also improved smallholders' productivity and quality and linked them to buyers. That's what USAID's coffee work looks like. USAID works with coffee companies and others in the sector to improve farming families' incomes and food security in environmentally sustainable ways that also benefit businesses, such as improving quality or increasing traceability. We work with buyers, researchers, lenders, and others, large to small, local to global. As we're savoring our virtual coffee before venturing further into the coffee lands, I'll give you an overview of what USAID does and how it works. Then I'll guide you through some of our coffee activities around the world with a focus on sector priorities such as farmer poverty and climate change. After our tour, I'll share information on ways you can engage in USAID's work to plan your own trip. So, what is USAID? What does it do and how do we operate? I'll start with our mission. In support of America's foreign policy, USAID leads the US government's international development and disaster assistance through partnerships and investments that save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people emerge from humanitarian crises and progress beyond assistance. Now, USAID is a donor or a funder that defines high-level objectives for activities that other organizations then implement. Coffee companies and sector partners may work with USAID directly as implementers, or they may work with nonprofit implementers that form coalitions that collaborate with companies, researchers, and others. So how are we organized? Well, USAID has several bureaus in Washington, D.C. I'm in the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, for example. And then we have country offices, which are called missions, in countries around the world where we operate. Washington and missions both develop and manage our own programming. In other words, we're decentralized, and we in Washington don't make decisions about everything that each mission does. So if you're interested in working with USAID, it's really important to form relationships with folks in DC as well as in our missions. And we work in coffee-producing countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We complement and work with other U.S. government agencies, such as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which also funds coffee work, and the Development Finance Corporation, a U.S. government institution that makes investments and loans in development programming. Now, I'm going to talk about USAID objectives because coffee activities and all of USAID's work must support USAID's objectives. So it's really important to understand these if you're interested in working with us. USAID's overall objectives are to support U.S. government foreign policy priorities and diplomacy, to foster locally led development, and expand opportunities for U.S. businesses. The Biden administration's foreign policy priorities include addressing climate change, COVID-19 recovery, fostering equitable economic growth, and addressing migration. These issues are all very relevant to coffee sourcing. Now, the Global Food Security Strategy guides our food security work, and it's most relevant to agriculture and coffee. It has 3 objectives: catalyzing inclusive agriculture-led growth, strengthening resilience, and fostering a well-nourished population. Central to this work is Feed the Future, the U.S. government's global hunger and food security initiative, which focuses in Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean, all key coffee-producing areas. Now, given that there are 25 million coffee producers globally, with 80% of them being smallholders, and many unfortunately experiencing pretty severe poverty and food insecurity. Coffee development work has huge potential to impact our objectives. Now, there are a few policies that we follow in implementing our work that are most relevant to coffee. This includes we prioritize private sector engagement to design and implement activities that have greater scale, farther reach, are more sustainable and lasting, and are more effective. All of USAID activities must integrate gender equality, women's empowerment, and youth development, targeting two groups that the coffee sector also prioritizes. So we have a lot in common. Now that we have done our orientation for our tour, so to speak, and we have context for USAID's work, it's time to tour some activities that involve coffee sector actors in different ways. So picture yourself as a participant in this journey, thinking about how you might engage, either working directly with USAID or through partners such as traders, lenders, or other like-minded companies, depending on the size and scope of your business. Now, USAID has a long history of working in coffee. Currently, we have about 18 activities that are working in 16 countries. These are all summarized in the coffee fact sheet, which is available as a download on the RICO site along with a presentation. These activities harness the power of private sector involvement to drive significant lasting improvements for farming families and the coffee sector. We also have a memorandum of understanding with SCA to address the coffee price crisis and participate on the Sustainable Coffee Challenge Advisory Board. So we've got long-term efforts as well as our targeted activities. Now, some of the key issues that we target in our activities include farmer income, climate change, and resilience among smallholders and enterprises. Activities address multiple issues, work across the market system to drive far-reaching change, and involve coffee companies, lenders, researchers, and others, as I've noted. So now I'm going to share a few activities. And the first stop in our tour is going to be 3 mission-led activities in Colombia, Ethiopia, and Guatemala. They work across the market system, from production to marketing, to improve productivity, quality, traceability, market linkages, and access to finance for men, women, and youth. They've all increased producer incomes, resilience, coffee quality, and linkages with buyers while strengthening this sector long term. Coffee companies are engaging in these activities by supporting implementation among producers and firms in their supply chain or forming long-term development relationships with activity-supported producers. Other sector partners may offer financing, engage in research, or provide expertise in production, handling, marketing, and varietal development. Now, Colombia's Producers to Markets Alliance is expanding markets for marginalized rural smallholder communities while reducing conflict and building peace. Ethiopia's Feed the Future value chain activity is increasing coffee exports in this birthplace of Arabica, along with markets for diverse crops and livestock products. Guatemala's Feed the Future coffee value chain project is working to improve nutrition along with coffee income. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the lean months that really do hit Central America. So as you understand, the nutrition and food security are critical to pair with our coffee work, and this is just one example. Now, in all countries, we're supporting training and education to increase quality productivity, smallholder empowerment, gender equity, and youth opportunities while mainstreaming climate-smart, environmentally sound production. In both Ethiopia and Colombia, we're also partnering with local actors on coffee competitions and traceability to help the sector meet 2 of their key demands. Now, each program has some really unique things I'd like to highlight. For example, in Colombia, they use virtual buyer caravans to help farmers connect with buyers during COVID. Farmers were actually able to connect with more buyers than ever before, and so they're going to keep that solution long term. In Ethiopia, we helped develop a Q grader course working with CQI, and this is for sampling, testing, and sensory labs. And we're also supporting coffee nurseries and varietal evaluation to help improve farms as coffee farmers are regenerating. So again, we're improving quality, improving capacity along the whole market system there. In Guatemala, we're improving nutrition by expanding production of nutrient-dense crops and promoting and also livestock, and promoting nutritious diets. So now we're going to leave those 3 countries and we're going to fly over 12 countries that are involved in an activity we manage out of Washington called the Feed the Future Partnership for Sustainable Supply Chains, and this focuses on COVID-19 recovery. This is co-funded with Keurig Dr. Pepper and the Ezra Charitable Trust with support from our U.S. government partner, Development Finance Corporation. Now, as we know, COVID-19 impacted smallholder production and marketing, which then wound up impacting coffee buyers. To address this, the partnership is helping small agribusinesses that work in coffee and other commodities survive and recover from COVID-19 impacts, with a focus on businesses owned or led by women. And these businesses may include traders, processors, or cooperatives and other producer associations. It works in 12 countries across Latin America, Africa, and Asia, helping these small businesses address operational uncertainties and improve market connectivity through things like business advisory services, debt relief, and grants. This support has helped these businesses to continue to serve and buy from smallholders, including those who grow coffee and other cash and food commodities. So again, these businesses that are a lifeline for smallholders to reach markets and that are a critical link between producers and buyers like you are able to survive and thrive during COVID through this activity. So now a third stop on our tour is looking at a climate change activity. This is also something we manage out of Washington. And as we know, addressing climate change is a priority for the U.S. government and the coffee sector. It's already impacted production and smallholder livelihoods in numerous ways, and it is contributing to increased migration, as well as food insecurity. To help the sector address climate change impacts on production, the Alliance for Resilient Coffee, a 7-member coalition, developed 6 tools to help companies and farmers make effective investments in climate smart practices. And you can access these tools on the website listed on my slide. These tools include a vulnerability tool, country profiles, a landscape assessment, a list of climate smart agriculture practices, a company climate risk analysis, and a cost benefit analysis for these practices. It also worked with coffee companies to analyze climate risks, test new farming techniques, and provide gender-sensitive climate-smart agriculture training. And in the end, they increased smallholder adoption of climate-smart practices that were demonstrated to improve profits and yields, creating a win-win for producers, the environment, and buyers. So that's the end of our journey. Now, I know you're tired. Stick with me a bit more, because I'm now to help you plan for your own journey moving forward. I'll share some potential ways that you can engage in USAID programming. Now, as I said before, there are different opportunities to engage, either working with USAID directly or through implementing organizations. And you might engage directly or with supply chain partners and other businesses, depending on how large your business is and what you do. Now, there are different ways that companies engage. In some cases, they provide financial support and funding. In other cases, it's in-kind support, such as technical advising or providing support to their producers. And there are also ways to provide strategic and policy inputs. The private sector website that I have on my slide has more information about the different ways we engage with the private sector. Now, USAID has limited funding, and when we do fund, there's a strong expectation for partner co-investing, such as the activity that we have that I mentioned with Keurig Dr. Pepper and the Alliance for Resilient Coffee. Those private sector partners did co-invest in those activities, but there are certainly other benefits in some cases where funding is not available, and this is often the case in some mission activities. It's more of in-kind support where buyers are able to access new coffee sources, or they're able to take advantage of technical assistance and link their producers into an activity to upgrade their supply chain and get that benefit. Now, there are mission, again, I mentioned the mission activities and DC activities. I'm going to talk about ways to get involved in each. With the mission for the Feed the Future and other activities, USAID missions may facilitate linkages to activities for current activities. For future activities, we post proposals online, and coffee entities may approach organizations to partner on the proposal. In the cases where missions fund private sector partnerships, which are called global development alliances that support specific objectives, then companies can apply directly. And USAID and private sector partners co-fund and co-create these. Some examples of mission-led global development alliances include several activities looking at agroforestry and habitat conservation, including in coffee systems. And USAID posts our solicitations at grants.gov and beta.sam.gov. There are also opportunities to work with our missions on policy advocacy. For example, in Ethiopia, we wanted to help increase Ethiopia's exports. So we consulted with the sector and asked sector partners what would make Ethiopia more desirable origin. And they said that they really wanted to have more traceability and more direct trade. So we went to Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, which oversees and controls Ethiopia's coffee exports, and they agreed to allow direct trade because they saw that there was an economic benefit, and that resulted in many more buyers accessing and buying Ethiopia's coffee. So now I'm going to talk about ways to engage in Washington activities. I'll start with a few activities that provide financing, and typically financing to producers or other enterprises in origin countries. An activity called ACCA supports lenders in making loans to agribusinesses such as producer groups, processors, and traders. They work specifically in Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. And you can get more information on the ACCA website noted on my slide. A new initiative called the Farm Fit Fund works with financial institutions that provide funds to complement loans from the Farm Fit Fund. And companies can use these loans to provide financing to farmers or small enterprises in their supply chains. And interested companies can contact IDH, which manages the fund. I've also got that website on my slide. Washington also funds global development alliances, as I spoke about with the missions, and the Alliance for Resilient Coffee and the Partnership for Sustainable Supply Chains highlighted earlier are two examples of that. A unique activity that we have is called Farmer to Farmer, and this mobilizes volunteers to provide technical guidance and training to producers and agriculture enterprises, including coffee enterprises. And Rick Pizer, who's on the slide, I think of him as the grandfather of sustainability, SCA, he volunteered to go to Burma or Myanmar when he was working at Green Mountain, now Keurig Dr. Pepper, to help producers connect to the market and understand market demands and improve their productivity and quality. And that also gave that company access to some new and interesting coffees. So there's always a double benefit there. And there are also opportunities to refer your local partners to program support, such as cooperatives and small enterprises. More information is on the website. Final way to engage with USAID Washington is input in policy and strategy. This includes stakeholder consultations on activity design or broader strategy, such as global food security strategy, where we engaged SCA and coffee companies. Now that ends our trip. I know the coffee is worn off. Here's a takeaway espresso. USAID has a long history of coffee development work, and we work with coffee development and others in the sector to do this. We engage the coffee sector to implement activities that improve outcomes for producers and firms while benefiting the sector overall. There are diverse ways coffee sector actors can engage in USAID's programming to make impacts that deliver shared value. So again, thanks for joining me around my trip around the world in our wonderful cafe. I'm now going to welcome my colleague Kurt Reinsma for the live Q&A. Thank you.